Hi guys. Okay, I messed up last week. Um, I got my weeks all messed up. Just mentally tired. Sorry. Late in the day, hair is gray. And I was thinking that I was leaving to go to North Carolina today. Actually, it's next Thursday, and then they will be a week between then and Ohio. I thought they were back to back. So teach me to look at a calendar. So we're going to try this out. After I told everybody don't show up, nobody shows up. I understand, and I will just do it another night. Probably Saturday night. I will do a live if nothing pops up tonight. Okay, but I'll let everybody know on social media. Hello, Hiram. How you doing? James, Justin. Hello. Steve, Ladrine. Good evening. Hello, Guns. Buck 112. Good evening. Rhett. Fishing Golf. Hello. Herbert Oakley. Joe Healy. Hello to New Hampshire. Eric, good evening. Hello, Jonathan Frisbee. Hey, brother, how you doing? And hello to Jennifer, too. Hope y'all are doing well. Francisco, good evening. Yeah, hello to Jerry in Virginia. Yeah, I messed up. For some reason, I had it in my head, okay? But you got to understand, for the last month, I've been just like, got to trying to get weeks ahead and everything. And I had it in my head that I was to leave today to be in North Carolina. It was the first weekend. That's actually next weekend. There's an extra week in there I wasn't counting. And then there is a week where I'm back home. And then the next week I go to Ohio. So I will figure it out one day. Francisco, hello. The Saxons, hello to Maine. Randy, glad you liked the bike video. I did that unboxing because people think about getting one. They don't realize how big that box is going to be. And so I got that, and I'm going to be, handing it off to Trinity. So I'm going to be taking it out and doing a quick overnight probably this Friday night. Hope's got something going on, so I may just sneak out the side door and go do a quick overnight with it before I have to hand it off. Pam, good evening. Hello, Justin. No problem, Justin. Just glad you're okay. Dead Prepper, howdy to Penn Woods. And Garen, hello to North Florida. Diane, how you doing? Diane, I got the new mold from Arizona Bullet Molds, the Colt 36, and went out and tried it today, and it showed promise. I shot it in my Stormborn 1861, and of course, I forgot my glasses. So I'm sitting there using the force. I can see the target, but I can't see my sights. They're just a blur. And yet I was able to keep them all at 10 yards in a circle about that big. And so then I went and dug out my emergency pair of glasses in the truck, which are pure magnifier reading glasses. So now I can see that rear sight real good, and I can't see the target. But I managed to keep them all on it. So there'll be more. I'm posting that video on this Saturday on my Rumble account. Jonathan Frisbee, I have to bug out for a bit and take Jen to dinner. We all have a great time. Be safe. David, hello to Orlando. Lynn, hello to Dothan, Alabama. Marcus, hello to Australia. We're just starting summer and you're about to start winter. Okay, Randy, Blackie, been meaning to ask, what is the components that friend of yours used to seal a painter's tarp? It was silicone and something else. I want to say it was mineral spirits, but that was William Collins's WC Knives channel. Go look at it, and he did a playlist on it of making that. He used a king size high thread count bed sheet, and he said it felt just like silk nylon. but I believe it was a tube of silicone and a gallon of mineral spirits is what he used. Twister, hello. Odine Green, hello there to Virginia. David Burkhalter, have you ever forged a striker for flint and steel? I did back in my rendezvous days. Back in them days, you could go up to a lot of the guys at the events that were doing blacksmithing, and you could, either buy one or can you show me how to do it? And so, with a lot of help over my shoulder, I was able to make 2 or 3 of my own back in them days. But it's been 30 years since I did it. Briar Smoke, good evening, California. Yeah, Eric, thank God GoEx is back. Diane, I did not. I was pretty loaded up right now, but realizing that the caps, like I said, they're coming out right now. May, June is when they're supposed to be doing the run. So everybody looking for caps, keep your eyes open. They're going to just pop up. They're doing the run because they're thinking it's only going to be used during hunting season this fall. So they're trying to get them on the shelves in June and July. So if you're wanting to do a purchase, start looking. They'll pop up, Jerry, yes, that is a very good steel for that old Buck 110. The question is going to be how hard it is to sharpen. But good news, do like I showed in that video, get one of those diamond homes. It will sharpen it. We had Arkansas stones. I didn't start seeing diamond stones showing up in common use until the mid-90s down here. So if you're looking, get a diamond hone, you can sharpen it easy because it's hard enough to cut that steel. VC, glad to do it. Hope to be there. Hope to do it again. Yes, James Singer. That's the new mold by Arizona Bullet Molds. It's a little sugar loaf, and I don't have it handy, or I'd show it to you right now. But it's a classic one like you saw out of the old Colt mold, but he brought it up to modern specs. So it's a 140 grain conical, and it's a 380 outward diameter. Drops from a mold, no problem. Cast it with the aluminum mold. Took it, loads easy, makes a good little ring, shoots accurately. I'm quite happy with it. Now I got to do a little bit of load development. Red Sorghum, good evening. Sanford Brown, good evening. Twister, hello there. Correct. That's right. Acetone and silicone. Mark Beard, hello there. Number 1 Big Bear, hello to Indiana. Okay, thanks, Eric. RWS 1075 caps are at Powder Valley. You guys looking for caps? Make sure you check them out. Oh, cool. Yeah, Pam, William did a great job with that. He's so busy. I hope he kind of gets back to doing some of these outdoor things and more of that because his channel was good. He's a knife guy, so he got to stay focused on knives. But I hope that the day will come he'll kind of retire and get back to doing the camping, fishing, outdoorsy stuff. Gordon, hello. Wow, Garen, yeah. You saw an E-Trike earlier today that kind of looks like a big wheel. Top speed of 40 miles an hour, range of 110 miles. Great for silver wolves. That'd be the thing where, especially in the communities, like retirement communities, where you're just going to go 2 blocks up here to get, the grocery store and a block and a half that way, be a great thing to have in a little retirement community or something, or to go up and down the trails around, get out and do some stuff. Tiny Titan, hello to Oregon. BC, no, we have just barely touched on it, but we will. and we'll give you plenty of time for next year. Me and Scab are probably going to get together. Probably, I don't know exactly when. Probably June, early June, before it gets too hot down here. And we'll probably get together and camp out and sit there and talk over nothing else. He may have me on his channel again, and we'll talk in depth about it. And so just hang loose. We will get you the information. Kelly Stinnett, hello there. 2020, glad you made it. Hello, Kelly in Eastern Oregon. Awesome. Thank you, Dead Prepper. Kodak, good evening. You're not really late. I only started like 5 minutes ago. Jules, hello to Canada. Cow Tipper, hello there. Thank you, Fishing Golf. Hello, Fred Freiberger in Northwest Louisiana. BC, glad to do it. David, do you have flint or chert in your area? What we have is chert, and it's normally river rock chert. I'm in an area of the state that is heavy of erosion that's come down from the Smokies and stuff like that. We're in that erosion plain, so we don't have big rock formations and stuff like that. You have sandstone rocks and you got river chert. That's about it. And you go north of us, about 40 miles north of me, and you get up onto the plate there, and they have rock up there. But my particular part of the state, you got to hunt to find a rock of any size. You know, I see the guys on Bushcraft Channel, they pull these 3 big old rocks together. Man, I'd take a half hour to find a rock down here. I mean, if it's not in the edge of a field and been plowed up, but you got to remember, my part of the country has been plowed since the 1600s. And so all them rocks is basically in piles or gone or now in foundations or something. So you just don't see a lot of large rock unless it's a boulder size hunk, you know, that nobody ever got around to busting up. And we just don't have that much rock or chert or flint or any of that stuff down here. You got to go to the northern part of the state to have a chance to find that. Brad, hello to Keeling, Virginia. Matthew Grillis, good evening. Yeah. You know, Fred, that's Louisiana hard pressed to find a rock. Something that I saw not long ago is that half of the state of Louisiana did not exist 5,000 years ago. All of it has showed up since the breakup of the Ice Age. It wasn't there. And so, whereas most of the other states lost ground, the actual shoreline was 60 something miles off of Mobile out in the Gulf. Now it's where it is today. Well, Louisiana's actually grown double its size in that amount of time, you know. So it's one of them things. There ain't no rock. It's all silt, you know. Jerry, are you still going to be doing a flint and steel fire starting video? And does Virginia have flint to find? I believe Virginia does. And yes, I am still planning on doing that very soon. We're going to talk tips and tricks for flint and steel. I used flint and steel for over 20 years in living history. That was the only approved method we had other than bow drill and stuff like that. So you practice a lot with flint and steel. So I'm going to make char cloth. I'm going to talk about selecting a piece of flint, different kinds of tools, whatever you want to do to make it, you know, and what kind of striker you're going to use, and etc. I'll cover it pretty much in depth. It'll kill. Good evening. Yeah, the using flint and steel, the most common problem people do is they use too small a piece of char cloth or piece of char. Now, what I ended up doing is I didn't do char cloth. I started out like everybody else doing char cloth. But we did that from a historic time period because they used that a lot, and it was easiest for us to get. Over time, doing our living experimental archaeology interpretation, $5 word for, we got better at it and found more history to actually play with. They use char, and if you've got a campfire, you've got char. Just take punky wood, put it in the fire, let it get going real good, let it burn down like halfway or something, and then bury it in the ashes and let it go out. That's that black charcoal like stuff you have in a fire. So the next morning you get up and you dig it up and you put it into a char tin and you just seal it up. Even if there's a tiny spark, it's smothered in there, say. Now when it's time to build a fire, you get your bird nest made up, and then you open up the tin and you sit there and strike sparks into the tin where all that char is. And something will catch a spark and go to glowing. And once it does, you fish that coal out and put it into your bird nest. Close the char box because it'll smother out and blow it into flame. Far more effective, than trying to keep char cloth bone dry, is we carried char. And every fire is what you need to start the next one, because you just take coals and stuff from your existing fire. Night before I go to bed, I rake up a pile of ashes or whatever and put me a couple of coals in it, bury them, let them smother out during the night, and the next morning I get out and fan the ash off of it, and if the coal is hot, that builds up my fire. If the coal is not, I pick it up with a pair of sticks, make me like a little pair of chopsticks or tweezers, and pick them up and put them in my tin and just close the tin. They'll smother out. As long as I keep them dry, they'll, months, weeks, whatever later, they'll catch a spark, and I'll demonstrate this on video. I did a video on it, but that was probably about like 2010, where I talked about using char, not char cloth, and it was really cold and wet and damp, and I still was able to get a fire going with that. So we will see. How much harder is Flint than the other? Pretty hard. I don't know the exact numbers, but chert will make a spark, but Flint is harder. It will cut the steel and get a hotter spark. So, Sage, that's correct. Flint and steel doesn't do well in high humidity. You got to have all your stuff ready, because that's one of the reasons I recommend like a 4-inch square piece of char cloth. Down here, my humidity, I'm going to get it going and actually kind of roll it over itself and make a big coal to dry it out. Otherwise, it's fighting humidity. It'll just go out right in front of you. Fred, I hear you. Yeah, you probably picked up a piece of chert off of the driveway. There's no river rocks or chert. Bust them and get a sharp edge, you can do it. Ooh, cedar is really, really good. Basswood's really, really good. Poplar's really, really good. I tell you, the real expert to go see his channel. That's the David West channel. He's not a bushcrafter. He practices primitive fire though, and he's got hundreds of videos on using woods I wouldn't have thought would have worked, like red oak and stuff like that. It's like, dude, that's too hard, and yet he gets coal out of them. And so, once you get your skill and your technique down, you learn what kind of wood just by feel. It used to, if we could take our thumbnail and push into it, it was soft enough to do it. It had to be punky enough, soft enough, and there's a feel to the wood, and it's one of them experience and tactile things. You can't just necessarily say this tree. Cedar is usually, but how much water content's in the cedar? How long ago did it die? How dry is it? See, lots of things. That's the reason I rarely ever want to rely strictly on primitive means. And I've told the story several times to me and Grouch whenever I was learning from Grouch. And I said I wanted to learn the bow drill fire, and said, okay. And we talked about it, went in depth, and we went out and had a big old tree down that was perfect for it. And so I had to make a bow drill set. And then for lunch, I had to make the fire that was going to heat up coffee for him. I wasn't going to drink coffee, but I was going to heat it up. And so it probably took me 30 minutes to get a coal. and I finally got a fire. I think I burned through that board like 3 times before I got a usable coal. And then when you get done, you threw it in the fire and burned it, took the string off. And the next day did it again. Next day did it again. We did that for the full week. On the 7th day, when I threw it in there for the last time, and I'd made 7 bow drill fires that week, he said, "What have you learned?" I said, "I'll carry a lighter in my pocket the rest of my life." And he laughed, said, "Me too." You know, in our humidity, it's a lot of effort to get a fire going. Yeah, Garen, finding about the hardest thing common in Florida is shark's teeth. You know, I've often speculated this has never come up in any official capacity I've ever found, but I bet that's where we learned to make arrowheads. Was we probably picked up shark's teeth, and that was probably the first arrowhead with shark's teeth. And when we went inland, had got away from the shore, we had to make a shark's tooth. And I bet you that's where we learned as primitive man to make a arrowhead, because shark's teeth are everywhere along the shore and they make good arrowheads. So, Jerry, how do you my sparks go up more than down, trying to learn. And do you sharpen your flint? Yes. I will break off the edge and make sure that it's got a good edge, so that when I hit, it scrapes and cuts the steel. If it's just hidden and they're just random little bitty things, I want to hit and throw a shower of sparks. But I'm going to cover that when we do it. But I want it to hit and throw a shower of sparks in a specific area. And a good sharp flint makes a difference. It really does. Oh, Charles Martin. Um, Sorry, I was trying to say how much harder than is flint and steel than ferro rod. Ferro rod is far easier because ferro rod produces a 2 to 3,000 degree spark. A flint and steel produces like a 5 to 800 degree spark. It's a weaker spark, and so you got to have your tinder, the stuff to catch it, really, really good. Whereas that ferro rod is going to generate a whole lot more heat. So, and that's one of the things I've said in my videos. Why carry flint and steel unless you're just wanting to play with it? Carry a ferro rod. If you want to carry charcoal, that's fine, but strike it with a flint with a ferro rod, because it's a really, really hot spark. It is the great improvement. And I bet you if you could step through time back to about 1810 with a barrel full of ferro rods, you'd be a rich man real quick. Mike Sparkman, good evening. David Bookhalter, what I use to make char material is a 1/2 inch cotton rope, right? You can put those into the tube and make the Mexican lighters. We used to call them that in the mountain man era. They were called Taos lighters for Taos, Mexico. Joe West, hello to Oklahoma. Justin, cattail was our standby. It's all over the Brazos River bottoms. True. Good stuff. Taxman, evening all. Oh, cool. I hope you really enjoy it. I like mine. I've used them for years and years off and on. And when be honest with it, when I think about a lock blade, the image that comes to mind is either my, and it's right here, either my old K-Bar 1607, which was just thinner, or a Buck 110. Buck 110s are far more common than these. Oh, yeah. Brett Johnson, good evening. I know what you're talking about, Justin. We didn't do it over here, but I do know what you're talking about. Tim Pierce, good evening. Shane Larson, the Maori of New Zealand use shark's teeth in their weapons. Yes, very effectively. There were many of the Philippine Islanders that used it as well. They're good, they're hard, they're sharp, they're durable, and they're plentiful. And just cut a groove. You can take a shark's tooth and cut a groove in a club, so to speak, and then add a little bit of some sort of epoxy that you can make to hold it in place and put a row of those shark's teeth. Very effective weapon. Jim Survival, good evening. Right. Garen, I remember reading about that based on one of the escapes at the Creek Indians. He'd found a shark's tooth or a gar tooth. I think it was a gar tooth, and managed to get the rope off of them. They either cut the rope or pick the rope apart. A lot of those twisted ropes, just like reverse wrap cordage. And if you just start picking the strands apart, it starts fraying. You can break the individual strands fairly easy. A fingernail can do it if you got time to pick them out. And that's one of the reasons they didn't tie your wrists. They tied your elbows together behind your back so you couldn't get your hand up there to the rope. And they had the prisoner collar on around the neck. Talking about history back in the day. Ani, hello to the Philippines. Oh, yeah, it'll kill. You bet. On a cold weather night, one of those. We used to use the cardboard egg crate that had been dipped in wax. We would take leftover candle wax, and you'd get like the postcards, for your power bill or whatever that would come in, and we'd take them and cut them into strips and put them in a piece of aluminum foil and pour wax on there and something like if the bacon grease was getting rancid, you added that to a little bit of wax. Anything that burned, and if you could strike a match to it, that wax would fuel it. It would go. Well, Sir Malcolm, thank you for dropping in. It's been going real well. Busy, but doing good. Oh, yeah. I hear you, Justin. When you get out in that cold plains and stuff like that, and that wind's coming straight out of Canada, it just goes through you. You don't care what it is, just is it warmer than here? Jim Survival, yes, I am. I will be coming up there. Me and Dakota are coming up to that gathering up there. That's the plan right now. Ooh, Gulf Coast Pine Belt. Blackie, when was the last time you went to Ship Island? Last time I went, the tour guy said it was a prison for Union soldiers. Imagine how that would have been in July and August. Oh, good God, yeah. I haven't heard that. I haven't been to that place in 20 years down there. I don't go to the beach like you'd think, us living so close to the beach. I'd be down there every weekend, but I was always more of a mountain type guy. I like mountains and woods, and it's so much sand and water at the beach. I mean, that's all it is to me. But the wife loves it. She wants to go down there and just walk up and down the beach and sit in the sun and bake. And I used to carry my hammock and get up under the pier in the shady side and tie between two of the pylons, and I'd just take a nap and let her play in the sand. Monty, good evening. David Bookalter, what is the Army Navy store in your videos? That is Kaufman's with a Kaufmans, military surplus in Sampson, Alabama. Phone number is 334-898-1770. Tell them Blackie sent you. They'll go hand select for you, no extra charge. Really good place. Really like the ladies. They'll really take the time and see what they can do for you. If they know where it is right then, they'll get it. If not, they'll dig it out if they can. Gordon, how cold of a temperatures could someone in a hammock, top quilt, two underquilts, cover with tent stove? I've been down to 4 degrees, but I understand. Oh, what is the guy's name? He's out of Michigan, up there. He does a comedy routine. He does a lot of hammock camping. I can see him, but I can't call his name right now. But he's talked about going down to 40 below in a hammock before. And I understand that the Norwegian Special Forces use hammocks down to 60 below. But that I've been down to 4. That's far enough for me. Monty, glad you're doing well, and so am I. Yes, Fred, that's a good trick to do. We used to take matches and wrap them up with jute or something else. There used to be a real heavy waxed cotton string. You'd get a feed sack. You go to the co-op and you'd get, I want to say it was either dog food. I think it was dog food. And you'd pick it and it'd be that white thread that you pulled and the bag opened up, but it was a waxed thread. And it was like a heavy sewing thread, and it was wax. My granny used to make us save those threads because she used them for certain things to sew up because it was such a heavy wax thread. But at the same time, it burned really well. And you could take like 2 matches and wrap it up, tie it on it, strike, and it would make a good fire starter. Oh yeah, play. I saw a video with Masayub. He suggested that shooters with old eyes get a set of backwards bifocals with the rear and front areas reversed. Might be possible. My problem is I'm farsighted and I see just fine. I can do whatever I need to do. But about arm level back, fine detail. My eyes are just old and tired and they don't want to focus down that tight. So, like the writing on that can, I have a better chance trying to read it at arm's length than I do right here because the closer I get, the harder it is to focus in unless I put these on. These are just basically magnifiers. And when I go to shoot, these I think are 1.75 power, and they're the perfect ones for me to do this on a computer, but also to shoot with because I can see my sights and see the target clearly. It's kind of like the sights are just a little fuzzy, but the target's good and clear. But if I get where the sights are really clear, the target's fuzzy. So it's got to be a big target then, for me anyway. Shug Emery, that's it, in Michigan. Thanks, Dave Bookhalter, in 2020. Diamond Dog food bags, that's it. Sir Malcolm, Blackie, not to derail the subject at hand, but I've heard you talk about shooting rabbits several times with the black powder sidearm. What's your favorite setup for doing that, and do you still do it? I still do it occasionally. I like to do it in like January, February down here in my part of the woods. All of the covers drop down, and on them cool mornings, bunnies come out in the edge of the field still looking for something to eat. And so you get them out there and all that brown, and they kind of stand out, and it's easier to see them. You see them in the underbrush a lot easier. I preferred 36, and round ball does really, really good. There's no need for a conical on a bunny. I aim for the eye, go for headshots. And that's one of the reasons I make my guns. I deepen the rear sight notch and put crossbars on it so that I've got a good range idea onto it. And I can normally, a bunny's head's about that big. I can usually stay on that head pretty effectively. And any good hit, and it's over. When I hunt, I want to turn it as humanely as I can. I do not want this animal to suffer. I want him to go in Valhalla Express instantly. He didn't even know what happened. That's my preferred method. I don't ever want an animal to have to sit there and linger. But even if something goes a little bit off, usually the impact of a round ball anywhere on the head is either going to break the neck, knock him unconscious, or out and out kill him. So any good hit, and he's dead, you know. And so that's my preferred method of it. It's usually a round ball somewhere around 20 grains, maybe a little bit less, depending on what is the target load. So if I'm going for bunnies, I'll be using the target load because I don't have a big, thick hide to penetrate or nothing like that. And so usually out to about 20, 25 yards, because I got a lot of experience doing it. I want to wear my glasses where I can see fairly well. Um, yeah, I can be fairly effective on bunnies with it. But it's a niche thing I do about that time of the year, and I carried it camping most of my life since I was a teenager. A lot of times I'll still carry a cap and ball with me, just because it feels like the field gun to me. Uh, if we're in heavy snake area, I'm on tote my single shot 20 gauge. It's just more effective, got a little bit more range. But the sidearm, if I'm trying to do for camp potting meat and stuff like that, get a rabbit here, get a whatever there, it'll be one of those. It'll be a cap and ball usually. I'm usually not going to starve to death. At the same time, I like the challenge of it. And it's a very effective as long as you can be accurate. And it really is kind of amazing the accuracy you can get out of it. Once you put the time into it and learn how to shoot it, it's really amazing how accurate they can be. It'll kill. Thank you very much. Gordon, have you ever made black powder? I did back in the 80s. I have not recently. But the guy that everything black powder online, he even did a review of my boar butter and gun butter and was impressed with it. He does it, and he does a lot of, can you make it out of hemp? Can you make it out of toilet paper? Can you make it out of, go check him out. He's very good at walking through how he makes his black powder. Sage, Blackie, have you ever used an S needle? Yes, I just picked one up, and it's a good alternative to Speedy Stitcher. It is, because you can either come from below and pop up, which is one of my methods, or hook two fingers and pop down. Really good whenever you don't have an awl with you. But the S needle can be very handy in a kit. I'm back in my doing the living history days. I have full sets of needles, all the different kinds of needles. And I had 2 or 3 different sizes of S needle, and really, they're very, very useful, especially when you're doing like a baseball stitch when you're coming to pull 2 pieces of leather together snugly. Really good for that. Brett Johnson, Blackie, how much powered XP would you recommend for a 36 Colt revolver target load? Usually with any of the 36s, no matter what the powder is, start somewhere around 15 grains and then ease up a little or down a little. I don't like to go below 15 because you don't know what the chamber capacity is of the gun, and you can get to a point that you get too low and you go to ram and the ball stops and it's not compressed. It ain't far enough down. So don't ever put like 5 grains in there because there's an airspace. And that makes for erratic ignition and can cause boo-boos like gun parts going bad, a detonation. So if you're going to go really, 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 really light, put a filler in it. Cap and Ball Channel did a demonstration where he took a 58 Remington and he took 5 grains or whatever would fit into an empty 22 long rifle case, dumped that in, and then filled the chamber up with cream of wheat and loaded the ball on top of that. And he was hitting a target at 25 yards with it. I wouldn't have thought it wouldn't have made 5 yards, but he was shooting a decent group at 25 yards. Of course, he's just poking a hole in paper. I wouldn't use that for hunting load. You watch the bullet in flight, it's like you just threw it. So, me, somewhere around 15 is a starting. Ease up a little, go down a little till you get the groups to shrink like you want. Cliff Tan, Blackie, what kind of torch do you bring in the woods? I've always got in my pocket, my EDC carry is an Olight torch 2. I think it's torch 2. I believe that's the torch 2. S1R, yeah. Rechargeable, so you can charge it up. It goes up to 1,000 looms, got multiple settings. That's the one I normally have on me. In addition to that, I carry an old mag light, and I've got an old light Seeker 2, is like my big flashlight. Excuse me. And then I'm going to carry usually a lantern for a camp. And I don't go real expensive stuff. If it's going to be battery powered, it's something like this. These LEDs do really, really good. And then the one that you've seen in my videos, I've showed several times, and I can't remember the name of the company right now, but I got it off of Amazon, and it's the slide apart. And it looks like the one you're getting at Walmart. It ain't. When it slides apart, you've got a whole lot more light cells in it. The cheap ones at Walmart have these kind of cells in it. Those big panels. The one that I'm talking about doesn't. And that one that I slide apart, it runs for 30 hours on three AA batteries. And underneath the lid, you unscrew the lid, and it'll hold 3 more. So that's 60 hours of continuous light out of that little bit of lantern that don't weigh nothing. So for my camp, that's usually, it's small, it's compact, it's about the size of a Coke can, a little bit thicker, but about this high. It doesn't weigh anything. And it's a perfect little camp lantern. So I have a light on me to click on, like, what was that? You know, go to nature's call at 2 o'clock in the morning. If I think I'm going to need more horsepower, I bring the bigger one. If we're having a big group dynamic, I'm bringing this lantern because it projects out light the best. And then if it's just me, it'll be this little bitty pocket flashlight and that pull apart lantern. And then I have a real small lantern a little small torch I carry in the top of my haversack for part of my EDC 10Cs. So I've always got a torch somewhere on me or around me, but that's basically of what I carry. I hope that answers your question. Hello, Bears in the house. Let me catch back up here. Shane Lawson, cool. Yeah, I've thought about that. And I used to shoot competition out to 1,000 yards whenever I was a young man. I don't have the eyes for it anymore. And so if I was still trying to shoot long range, I would go get me a pair of glasses made up for it. But for what I'm doing now, close range, you know, it's one of my favorite lines from John Wayne movie Big Jake, when the Indian shows up and he says, there's your horse, there's a such and such. He said, I got no gun. And John Wayne starts to turn around and turns back and says, near or far? And he says, near, eyes, no good. And he picks up a double-barrel shotgun and hands it to the Indian, and he picks up his own and goes, me too. I can't, you know, I can still see out there, but I can't see the sights to shoot long range anymore. Preacher Man, hello to West Virginia. It'll kill. Blackie, what do you do if you're shooting a new cap and ball revolver to help you figure out your gun? Follow my videos that I've talked about. First, I'll take it apart, clean it thoroughly. I will do a little deburring, making sure that nothing's going to bind up and snap a spring because it's too tight or whatever. Clean everything up, etc. Get it ready to shoot. I'll take it out, and I will, like in a 36, I'll start with like 15 grains. In a 44, I'll start with 20 grains. And I'll just shoot at a target, take a big piece of poster board, put it out there at 10 yards, put a dot in the middle of it, aim for the dot. Don't really go for a group. I want to see, man, is this thing shooting 2 feet left, you know, which would mean it needs a lot of work. On the other hand, if it's kind of okay, this is something I can work with, then I'll start doing load development on whatever. But follow my videos, and I'll take you step by step through different gunsmithing, break it in, get it ready to go, and etc. But that's how I do it. In fact, that's what my series is doing. I'm showing you verbatim when I start with a gun I've never shot, what I do with it. You know, how I get the gun ready to go to take to the range, so that I've limited many of the things that could go wrong because of manufacturing, or something was too tight to begin with, or something was too loose to begin with, or something's going to bind up or whatever. And that's what I do to kind of get it all rolling along. Okay. Yes. 20 25 grains of round ball, Brett. Um, Starting at conical or round ball. I normally start somewhere around in there. Okay. Pink, good evening, brother. Hope you're doing well. Hello to Bear granddaughter and grandson. How y'all doing? Chris Robbins. Hello to Virginia. Kilkee. Yeah. Brett Johnson, glad to do it. Will Rowell, what do you think about 38 special with wad cutters for concealed carry? It was effective for 100 years. As long as you can place it at 99% of all combat occurs at 21 feet or less, more than adequate, as long as you can place it. I would not feel unarmed with wad cutters. Riverbank Viking, good evening. Brett Johnson, yes, I have heard. You said I enjoyed your recent video on the green strike anywhere matches. Has anyone heard of them being utilized in homemade percussion caps? Yes, I've heard of them being taken apart and returned into the priming compound for that. Um, I have. I haven't done it myself, but I have heard of it happening. K-Town, what I've been using is a Blue Eddy. It's an investment, but it seems to be extremely well made. I used a 750 watt as a camping one for 2 years. Now I've got the big 2000 water, and I'm very happy with it thus far. I've had a couple others come and go over time, but the Blue Eddy has been pretty good for me. Now the Jackeries, I understand, are very good too. And I know that James Bender swears by the Jackeries, and I believe Dave Canterbury was using a Jackery for a while. So those two would be what I'd look at. Gulf Coast, sounds like we're going to have an active hurricane season. When Katrina hit, how long were y'all out of electricity? We were out for a month, so all we could do was listen to Hell Unfold in New Orleans radio. I got you. We were out of power for 8 days here, but I'm far enough away. I'm 6 hours from New Orleans. But when Katrina, the eye of Katrina, hit New Orleans, I was in the outer bands. That storm was 1,000 miles across, and it was Cat 3 here, and I'm an hour by car inland. So yeah, it took down trees, it took down everything. Opal was worse to the west of it, but for us here, I think it was 8 days we didn't have power, and it's because just the entire system is down everywhere, and they got to rebuild it basically. Buckeye 80, good evening. Stacy Sparks, hello, hello to the west, by God. Briar Smoke, do you wax dip your strike anywhere matches in winter when you feel your match safe? I have not, but it wouldn't be a bad idea. But to be honest, I have done matches and I painted them with fingernail polish before. I like painting them with fingernail polish, that front half, because a strike anywhere I'd paint up to the head and leave just that top half of it unpainted. You know, I'd take the match out and like that's the very head I'd come back just a little bit and then start there and paint down like half. That way I'd get a big thing and it won't be wet. If the match gets wet, it will still light and will work. But and that fingernail polish makes a big hot flame. So in the winter I really want that. But today we got Ukios. We don't have to paint them to get a hot flame. But I haven't done the dipping in a while because I've got a good match safe. I'm pretty confident. In fact, right here, this is an old candy match safe. It had candy in it when I got it in about 1974. You see how I got to open it. And there are strike anywhere matches in that. And this was, I dug it out of an old kit I had from 1974. Still works, you know. It's an old candy device. Taxman, Gulf Coast Pine Belt from Biloxi. You remember it, that's a fact. Lamb and Doc, hello there. Blackie, what's the best mod for a Colt 36? Deepening and widening the rear sight so you got a good sight picture. Take your front side of that cone and actually show this in video. Kind of file it down so the top is a little bit flatter and square so you got a better sight picture. Big improvement on accuracy. I will actually, on the side of the barrel, I'll put my thumb up there against the sight as a stop, and I'll lay a file up there, and I'll go across to kind of cut into that cone to make it more of a point, like it's like a flat wedge. Look at my video, and I'll show you how to do that sight. That and widen and deepen the back notch so I got a good, clear sight picture. That's the number one modification I'd make to any of the cap and ball Colts. Because if you can't see the sights, you can't hit crap. It's inconsistent. I have to see a little bit on daylight, so it's more like a modern partridge sight. But that's my number one mod to any of them. Mark Lucer, good evening to Arizona. Thanks, Pink. Me and Miss Hope say we love you. Hope to camp with you again soon. And say hello to Mama for us. David Bilcoulter, you have used the Jacker for years and it's excellent. Thanks for commenting. Yeah. Sage, Mississippi got that was the unsung. Everybody heard about how bad New Orleans got destroyed. Mississippi got, true, it's not as industrialized and it's not as built up, but them poor farmers, they lost barns, they lost everything out there because that storm front was just so horrible coming in, Katrina. Buckeye 80, old film can work for matches. True. Max Payne, hello to Blackie and all the Silver Wolves. Cool, welcome aboard. Zodsicker, Adventures with the Marine. Yeah, well, Grouch. Me and him's had more than a few. Well, Sean, thank you very much for dropping in, and I hope you will again. I'm usually on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Central Time. Usually. K-Town, Blackie, what Leatherman model would you recommend? I'm not a good one to ask that. To me, a Leatherman's an overglorified pair of pliers. I've got the first model Leatherman that they ever came out with back in the 70s. Still got it, still use it. And I've got a nice, more modern Gerber, but I just don't use them that much. My multi-tool is a Swiss Army knife. But I know a lot of the young guys, that was their pocket knife, was a Leatherman or a multi-tool. But I just don't use them that much. It's a tool to me. I leave it in the glove box or in the toolbox on the truck and pull it out when I need it. So I'm afraid I can't really be honest and comment a lot on that. Just I've used them a lot, but not enough to really comment on a better or worse. Gordon, I know Grouch smokes a pipe. I think you said something about it. You smoke Prince Albert. What brand does Grouch use? Borkum Riff is his favorite. Really good, aromatic, smells good in the house. Nobody complains about the smell. Tastes good. Borkum Riff is what he's been using for the last 40 years. Buckeye, good evening. AK-47 or AR-15? Do you want absolute reliability or do you want accuracy? The AK, you can be buried for 20 years, pull it up, and it'll shoot down a low-flying gunship. But it's going to have a hula hoop-sized group at 100 yards. The AR will stay on a coffee can out to 200 if you do your part. But you got to treat it like a girlfriend. So do I want absolute reliability or absolute accuracy? Each one, everybody brags about the reliability of the AK. They don't brag about the accuracy that much. Everybody brags about the accuracy of the AR, but you got to treat it like a girlfriend. So I'll throw one in there, a AR 180. You know, give me a third choice, a Galil. Galil would be my choice over the two of those. If you gave me that choice over the AK or the AR, Galil. Edwin, hello to the great state of Tennessee. Preacher man, please pray for my mom, Mary Ann. She's out of ICU, improved a lot, but it's having a tough night. Amen. Ground fog, hello there. It'll kill. Blackie, have you ever done any bullet mods for a cap and ball worth noting? Oh, yeah. I've modified the sights, modified the nipples so that it wouldn't split the caps the same way, reduce cap jams, dehorn the slot in the hammer on a Colt to keep from sucking caps off. Look at my playlist, and there's a lot of videos on there of modifying a Colt or something to make it better, a cap and ball. Ken Aldridge, good evening. Fred Freiberger, I want to find a match safe that holds 3 or 4 matches in my wallet. I tried making a tape envelope. It did not prevent me from destroying the matches. I can tell you a trick I've seen done. Take a McDonald's drinking straw, heat one end, squeeze it with a pair of pliers so it seals shut. Then put 2 matches, start them in with the heads down, stagger it, put the other 2 matches in, take a rammer and slide it all the way down and squeeze the thing closed and heat it up to flame and squeeze it closed. That's waterproof, fairly durable, and fairly rigid. And stand it up vertically in a wallet to one side or whatever so it's not on your hip. I knew a guy that was a truck driver. He carried a couple matches that way. When you get there, you got to tear it out of the tube. They'll be dry. John Stanton, FNFAL, very fine rifle, heavy, very fine. So's a M14. I built and shot M14 in competition, and really good rifle for long range competition. Big, heavy hunting gun, you know. Which I had a bar at one time too that I loved to plink out a few hundred yards with, but. Preacher man, good luck to her and to you. Correct. AK-47. Well, the AK-47 was designed to be a suppression fire weapon. They're there to keep you off the tank. The tank is the primary attack force. So the infantry would ride on the tank, so they got up engaged, and they would jump off the tank. And their AKs were designed to throw a cone of fire out to about 300 meters to keep your head down so the tank could kill you. Because that was always the tank weakness. If you didn't have infantry around it, somebody will run around the side or whatever and get up on top of the thing and plop mud over all the viewports so it's blind, you know, and then it's not effective. It's a sitting duck, you know. And so they had to have infantry. And the job of the AK was not to be a precision gun. It was a suppressive, like a hose to throw reliably bullets into groups. The SKS was designed to be a rifle and shoot accurately. And usually if you put an AK and an SK up side and side, the SK is going to outshoot that AK 9 times out of 10. I've seen it be beat before. But usually the SK was a much more accurate gun than the AK, because AK wasn't designed to be accurate. It was designed to be reliable. Man-sized groups at 300 meters. That's all it cared about. Oh, I'm sorry. You meant the bullet itself. Okay, let me back up and figure out what you're asking. It'll kill. Oh, the bullet. Which do you prefer between the AK or the 5.56? 5.56. Do I like the 308? The 308 diameter, the 7.6239? Yes, very effective. It does anything a 30-30 Winchester will do. And in those two platforms, I'll take the 5.56 because ammo's cheaper and more available right now. Plus, there's a lot more I can do with it, and I can drop in a cartridge conversion up top, and suddenly it's a 22 long rifle, so I can cheaply practice and take small game with it easy. That's something the AK can't do easy. So the two platforms and the bullets of the cartridges, 5.56, because I can shoot 2.23 for accuracy, 5.56 for spray and pray, 22 long rifle for small game, all out of one gun. Good night, Bear. Thanks for coming in. Yeah, preacher man, give it a try. If you can't find plastic drinking straw up there, go look in the aquarium department of any pet store or the big box stores and just they got the tubing, that plastic tubing. Same idea. Brett Johnson. Sorry about that. Good night. Gordon, I have not played with a Tikka 270. I'm aware of it, but I really can't comment on it. I know what a 270 can do, but the Tikka, I have not experienced it. John Stanton, I carried the 14 in the Army, fell in love with FNFL when stationed in Europe. That boy, we ticked off everybody because of that. We kind of ramrod, like old Paul Harvey used to say the rest of the story. At the end of World War II, Britain realized the bolt action is obsolete, and so they wanted semi-automatic. And so, literally, in the days right before Pearl Harbor, we adopted a new service rifle in the United States in 276 Peterson. We were replacing them $1,000. And Douglas MacArthur said, BS, I am not starting a conflict and changing guns. So they kind of threw it out the window. But Britain remembered that. And they were sure that when the war was over, they were going to come back to it. So they'd kept all their research and stuff. And so the war is over, and England scraped up the money to arm its troops with, I think, 1 million rifles, or 3/4 rifles, in 276 Peterson. And then the U.S., we said to NATO, NATO compliant. Everybody's going to have the same battle cartridge, and it's going to end up being 308 7.6251 NATO. And the Petersons couldn't be converted. And so England said, but we don't have the money. And so we had to loan them the money, and we made them take and cut up those rifles they just sweated blood to build. And the FNFAL was going to be the issue battle rifle of all NATO forces. Everybody was going to do it. We even got H&R to build FNFALs for our testing. And then we adopted the M14. Yeah, we did not make any friends with that action. Uses the same cartridge, but it don't use the same mag. Parts are not interchangeable. Everybody else had to be FNFAL. You know, I always liked the FNFAL. I love shooting it. It sits well. Tim Pierce, please discuss preserving feet in warm weather, i.e. for silver wolves. Okay. I like a thicker sock with a wool blend for a couple of reasons. One, it will wick moisture away from the feet in the summer, and therefore you don't get wrinkly feet nearly as easy. Cotton socks, once wet, will give you that wrinkly feet, wrinkly toes, and everything. You get trench foot, etc. At our old silver wolf age, we do not, our metabolism and our old skin is not nearly as resistant as it used to be. So I wear that. Another trick you can do is to put on a thin nylon dress sock and then put on a wool blend sock over that for your hiking socks, etc. Carry extra socks. When you stop for lunch, take the socks off, air your feet, dry them out. Turn the socks around if you ain't got any more and put them back on after lunch. Makes a big difference in how our feet feel, because A, we're keeping them dry. B, we keep that cushioning because we're not as young as we used to, and we don't have as much meat around our feet as we did when we were younger. Don't have as much muscle as we did. And 3, it keeps infection and problems like that down where we're not rubbing blisters and stuff like that. That's what I do in hot, sweaty weather. And I will be doing I did a video a while back called Staying Cool. And I will be doing a video this year for the Silver Wolves talking about feet and stuff like that and how to try to keep from causing trouble in the sweaty times of the year. So I will be doing a video on that. It'll kill. Why do some people knock the 14? The 14, when it came out, everybody knew we was going to pick it because it was a kind of like the M1 Garand, and everybody loved the M1 Garand. Then we got the AR, and people hated the AR when it first came out, and then we learned to love it. And so it was the shortest lived battle rifle was the 14, because we almost immediately went to, it was only out like 3 years, 4 years total before we went to the 16. And yet it hung on and kept, when we went to Desert Storm, we brought them back out, and it became a viable gun again for its special purposes being used in combat. But people just knock on them because they're big and heavy, because they're used to the light 6-7 pound AR now. They weren't toting the 10-pound Garand. They were toting a 4-pound lighter gun. So when you pick up a 14 and you're not accustomed to it, like, God, this thing weighs a ton. That's one of the reasons they hick out. Plus, they're used to a gun that doesn't hardly kick. M16 has little recoil. A 14's got a little bit of recoil. And so they're not used to it. So you can see where the transition went. This generation versus that generation. Last chance. Howdy. Thanks, Blackie. I will try that. Tend to overcarry due to past experiences. Once is all it takes to make you want extra with you. True. But we'll go too far. Carry what you need and a little bit of a safety buffer. Don't carry the whole kitchen sink, because then it's not any fun to go out there anymore because you're hauling so much stuff. Cut a little bit of here, cut a little bit of there. You'd be amazed what little you can get by with. Jerry Donnell, I have seen them for like 150 or okay, guys, help me out. Is it Simpty Mags? It starts with a C, but it's where you push the pin tip up, you pull out the bolt carrier on an AR platform, slide this new bolt carrier in, which has a chamber in the front of it and a working bolt. You just slide it in, same as the bolt carrier came out, close it, and put the 22 mag in. It shoots 22 long rifle. Back when I used to build such guns for competition, my gun sets came with the full bore and a 22 conversion for practice and etc. So you can shoot 22 long, same size bore, shoots 22 long rifle just fine with that special bolt that you drop in. See, it'll kill. Thank you. Glad to do it. Yeah, Shane. Lieutenant Dan, the Forrest Gump. Socks. Extra socks. Yes. Last chance. I do the thin nylon sock under the wool and it works great. Absolutely. If we're going to be going on a long hike in hot conditions, that is my rig up. Thin, I'll carry like 2 pair of thin nylons because I can rinse them out and hang them up in the dry in 10 minutes. And at least 2 or 3 pair of those wools. And if that wool ever starts knotting up and I start feeling a hot spot, hit the deck, pull them off, dry your feet, put a fresh sock on. Don't let it start rubbing, because once you get that blister started, you just got to get off of it. You'll never get it to quit. Mark Young, well, hello to the group. Thanks for coming in. Good night, Dave Burkhalter. Thanks for coming in. Texas Sheepdog, hello. Oh, yeah, Randy, the Garand is a great rifle. And I keep saying, I'm in a club. I've got all the stuff. All I got to do is go up here, and CMP is up here in North Alabama. I can be up there in just a couple hours and go select my M1 Garand and get it. And every year I go, nah, I need to get off my butt and go get my own. I've had 14s, I've had 03s, I've had BARs, I've had all that stuff. I've never had a Garand. I've shot a lot of them, but I've never had one that was mine. So Bear's got one. I've shot his a little bit. So I might do that on my channel on Rumble. Borrow a couple other guns. Like I said, I know as much about guns, modern guns, as I know about woodscraft, because I did gunsmithing and stuff. And I thought about going to my Rumble and doing a thing on the M14, the M4, the M16, M1 Garand. Here's one for you. BM59. Who knows what that is? Mark, oh yeah, I got you. That's it. Thank you, Texas Sheepdog. CMMG conversion. Look for that. It's super simple, and it just drops in. You have the Air Force to thank. Back in the 60s, they wanted a gun to practice on air bases where they didn't have a lot of stuff, and so they made this drop-in conversion for old M16s, which those companies are gone now, but the CMMG is the modern version and much better quality than what we had back then. So you get one of those and drop it into a AR, and you've got a 22 long rifle. Same sights, same trigger, and the trajectory of a 5.56, 223, and 22 long rifle is the same out to 50 yards. So I can take it and do my tactical drills up close, my reaction stuff, shooting 22 long rifle, and then click, snick, and go for 300 meters for range with the full bore. So you drop back in the 5.56 and shoot for range. So it turns that gun platform into a whole nother thing. Plus, I can go back about 1992 on opening morning of squirrel season in Alabama. I was sitting up under this big oak tree, and this game warden was coming up the road up there, and he stopped and looked. He doubled back around. He came back in the fence, and he pulled up there at the edge of that pasture. He just swung the door open with his foot and looked at me and said, "Morning." I said, "Hi." I'm like 15 feet from him across the 3-strand fence. And he said, "So what are you doing this morning?" I said, "I thought I'd do a little hunting." He said, "Son, deer season ain't in." I said, "Yes, sir, I know." And I pulled the charging handle and ejected out a 22 long rifle. And I said, "That's the reason I'm hunting squirrels, sir. I don't have any other bolt and any other cartridges with me. This is a 22 long rifle." It was a heavy barrel, long targeted, sighted AR-15 that I was shooting squirrels with that day. He said, "Oh, let me see that." Oh, yeah. There you go. The Saxon, the Italian M14 copy. It's where they actually got M1 Garands and converted them to be mag-fed like a 14, the BM59s. They eventually made them from scratch, but the first ones were, at the end of World War II, we gave them a bunch of Garands. And Beretta took them and reworked them and turned them into a magazine fed. And the dead giveaway, when you look at one, is the back of the 14 mag is vertical, and the back of the BM59 is angled forward just a little bit, like a FNFAL. In fact, I think it uses FNFAL mags and rocks in. It'll kill. What's the hottest accurate load you've developed for a 36 and a 44 Colt? Depends on the gun, you know. What is the hottest load? I was breaking 1,000 feet per second out of a Walker with a Kato Ojama hunting round using 777 powder. And I think it was 48 grains at 777. The 36, probably the hottest thing I've got out of a 36 was I was right at 1,000 feet per second, like 998. And it was out of a 51 Navy I had at one time that had sort of an oversized cylinder to the bore. And so it would generate a lot more pressure trying to force it down that barrel. And she liked power decks, full chamber of power decks and the ball on top of it and just a little bit of grease. She was pushing right at 1,000 feet per second. So that'd be about the two hottest that I can think of right off the top of my head. Although on camera, I shot my short barrel 58 Remington sheriff's model with a arrows gone Johnson & Dow bullet and had like 975 feet per second out of it. And I think that was 777 powder. Gulf Coast Pine Belt. Is the Talladega Mountain Range and Bankhead National Forest worth going to in Alabama? Yes. The Sipsey Wilderness area is inside Bankhead and is a true wilderness. Now, there's a river going through that you can either canoe down or there is hiking trails through there. But yes, it is worth the look to go look at it. The one and only Nicole. Message retracted. But hello. Thanks for coming in. Okay, Metalworks. Blackie, what's your take on 12 gauge gun adapters or 20 gauge gun adapters, and what would you pick for a shot less than 50 yards? If I was going to pick one, it would be the 9mm. Ammo's cheap, available, and 9mm over penetrates, remember, which means it's giving it an advantage on bigger game. Golly. Short lane arms. I've got one in 9mm. It's like the 8-inch barrel rifle, and I can easily stay on a small target out to like 35, 40 yards, and I can stay on something usable on out. That and the 38 special, because I can use good hunting ammo on that and stay out on a deer to say like 50 yards or less. Yeah. And I have done that on camera before, demonstrated that I could stay out on 50 yards and stay on a paper plate, which is the vitals of a deer. Minute of deer is what we used to call it. If you can put all shots on a paper plate, that's the bingo area of the heart lung area of a white-tailed deer in lower Alabama. If I can keep all shots on that paper plate, that'll hunt. And I have demonstrated I could do that with both of those two, a little 8-inch barrel or whatever there are inserts into a single shot 20 gauge that I've got, or under a 12 gauge I had. And they will do a very good job. The smooth bores, don't waste your time if you want to hunt. The drop-in smooth bores will give you something that goes bang, but the accuracy is not going to be there. Get the rifle if you're thinking about using it for hunting. Okay. Dances was empty. Oh, a BM59 would be awesome just to play with it. I've held one several times, got to shoot one a couple times, but I've never owned one. But they're rare as hen's teeth today. I mean, wow. Oh, yeah, that's a save up. Bob, don't worry. Yeah, but thanks for coming in. You're not late. We're just talking, that's all. The one and only Colt. Only 300 meters. You can fire a lot farther out, but what is the designated area? That will, it's kind of like a patterning a shotgun. You're supposed to pattern it at 40 yards. Excuse me, 30 yards is what it is. And what the military standard is 300 meters. A M4 platform, 5.56 or M16 should have all shots would land in a hula hoop 30-inch circle at 300 meters. That is the military standard that they want to do for suppressive fire. And so that's what they're looking for, accuracy and reliability of that. On the other hand, that same cartridge in a bolt action, call it a varmint cartridge, it better be able to stay on a Coke can at 300 yards or it's not a prairie dog killer. So 300 meters is the rough standard. Germany is the one that figured that out at the end of World War II, that the average soldier would not engage a target beyond 300 meters unless ordered to do so. So he'll call mortars. He'll tell the machine gun guy to open up. But the guy shooting, average shooter, wasn't messing with anybody beyond 300 meters. They weren't looking, for it. And so that's the reason they at the beginning of World War I, our troops practiced out to 2,400 yards. Let that sink in a second. To graduate basic training in the United States in 1875, you had to have 3 hits out of 10 tries on a 18-inch wide, 6-foot tall whiteboard at 1,000 yards with a single shot 45-70 trapdoor Springfield. If you couldn't hit that board 3 times out of 10 shots, you couldn't shoot and you didn't graduate basic training. And you go back and look at the discussions of how they were keeping the Indians at bay at 700 yards with iron-sighted single shots, And then you look at World War I, where the idea of volley fire out to 2,400 yards, where a whole company would sit down and the command would be to set the sights up to so far up and everybody aim at a given thing with the officer sitting there with binoculars calling it in like artillery out to 2,400 yards. In basic, they shot out to 1,000. Soldiers today are trained out to 300 yards. Great granddad would think we can't shoot. But our guns are designed for modern warfare, up close. That was one of the problems we had when we went to Desert Storm and went trying to shoot so far out, because we've been training to go fight in the Black Forest of Germany where targets were going to be 50 or 100 yards out, and here we're trying to look at a dust-colored target in the middle of all this sand at 500-600 yards out with some guy lobbing shells with an old World War II Mauser back at us. So different mindsets of what is effective ranges, what is the uses of the gun. Cool. Texas Sheepdog CMMG kit comes with a custom mag, and Midway USA sells spare mags for it. Awesome. Joe West, is the AK-74 any more or less accurate than the AK-47? The AK-74 is more accurate. When they went to that Soviet 5.56 cartridge, it was in direct response to our cartridge, because the AKs, when we went into Vietnam, they were outclassing us, because the combat loadout, when you went into Vietnam, when Grouch went into Vietnam, was an M14. You had 1 magazine in the gun and 2 magazines on your hip. Your combat load was 60 rounds. The Viet Cong had an AK with a 30-round mag and 10 30-round mags on the chest carrier. We were outgunned. By the 90s, the late 80s and 90s, when they went to their 5.56 version, 5.56 by 4.5, I believe it is, it was in direct response to fighting the M16s, and they wanted that kind of ballistic. So the AK-74 is actually more accurate than the AK-47 because of that. Again, different job evolution, like I talked about earlier. Andy Knight, good evening to South Florida, South Georgia, sorry. Preacher Man Blackie, if hammock camping under a tarp, what do you prefer for quilt material? Down with waterproof light cover, synthetic, or wool blanket during cooler seasons? To me, in my neck of the woods, down is a deep winter. I do have that down top quilt that I got from One Wind, super warm. Only time I'm going to use that is either going to be December, January, February because it sweat me out otherwise. Usually I like synthetic and a wool blanket during the warmer times at transition because in the summertime I won't even have an underquilt on a hammock because I'm wanting the cooling effect. I'm down here in this heat. And so when the sun goes down, it's going to radiate heat upward for several hours. So it's 11 or 12 at night before it ever starts to cool down and come under like 80, 85 degrees down here. And so I'm using just a sheet a lot of time during the summer to camp. So I don't even use an underquilt during the summer most times. But I prefer synthetic unless we're talking deep winter and then it's down. Sage, Blackie, what's your experience with crossbows? I played around with them some in the 1980s. They're really good and really quiet for nocturnal hunting. But as long as you realize that you're still a 25, 30-yard weapon, yeah, they're very effective, especially for silver wolves and stuff where we just don't have the arm strength anymore to sit there and hold. Having one pre-cocked, we can aim like a rifle. They work very, very well. Guy, good evening. Good night, Fred Freiberg. Sleep well. Yes, 5 by 4, 5 by 3, 9. Okay. I thought it was 4, 5. There may have been a different one I was thinking of, but yeah, 5 by 4, 5. That's it. We used to call it the Russian 5.56, but it wasn't 5.5. It was 5 by 4, 5. Right. It'll kill. That's the reason that those maximum settings on those old guns was so high up. You couldn't hold it on your shoulder. They didn't. They sat down and they put the buttstock on the ground like a mortar sometime, or they would, prop it up and they're actually holding their head straight up. They put it on their hip and or down here and angle up it because they were firing in mass volleys of 200, 300 guys at one time firing. Didn't have to have that really great accuracy, but I remember reading a write of how an officer was to call corrections. That he would spot a target, say at 2,000 yards. The men would get into position, and he would call out like the tree with a broken top. Everybody aim over the top of that. Okay, beyond that, you see such and such. You see the white tent. Everybody aim at the white tent. And then he would dial out one lens. Remember, on binoculars, one is focusable and one's not. He would close the other eye and he'd dial it out so you could see the bullets in flight. You see the vapor trail of bullets and see where they kind of landed out there. And then he'd adjust. He'd say up, right, up, left, down, left, down, right. One click, 2 click, whatever. And they were trained to move it down like a given space. And he'd walk it on to him. He always wanted to start short and walk it up to him. And literally rain bullets. That was the idea. Rain bullets on enemy formations, break them up. It wasn't so much meant to kill any given individual. It was to inflict casualties and make people have to take cover and break up guys getting ready. And back in them days, remember, a lot of horse cavalry. Up until World War II, the Germans still used a lot of horse cavalry. We used a lot of horse cavalry in World War I. And so spotting a bunch of horses way over yonder with a artillery battery or a supply depot or whatever, being able to hit horses and wound them, that was a big thing. I'm just full of it tonight, ain't I? Correct. Ken Lang, yes. I got you. The one and only Nicole, correct. If you're dyslexic, they look a lot alike. Frank, yes, I am very happy with mine. The one I just did the video today, that's going to my niece Trinity. But I'm still very happy with mine. I've been running up and down the woods with it. Um, Man, it was just so easy to exercise. I need to exercise at my age and in my health and my heart condition. I need to exercise. But at the same time, you get going and you run out of air. Being able to just turn that throttle and kind of rest and keep going. And then, okay, and then just let go of the throttle and go back to pedaling is such an advantage. It really is. Oh, wow. Okay. Tank Diesel, Blackie, if you don't have your own knife and William Collins wasn't making knives, what would be your go-to knife? That's a good question. The knife that I carried and was happy with before getting William Collins, I had a Mora and then I had a Condor bush lower. Today, if I could not have my knife, I could not have one of the WC knives, where would I go? Good question. Um, I like the knives that come out of SRO and Pathfinder. I've got the Buffalo Skinner. I do like the Condor bush lower. It's a good budget knife, does a good job, holds an edge well, easy to sharpen, and is replaceable if it gets damaged or lost. So, not talking custom, somewhere along in there is really, really good. But if we're still talking custom and I couldn't have a WC knife, I would probably look at some of the big names walking around right now. I play with a lot of them. So it comes down to personal preference. Frank, have you considered the best way to mount a rifle and a walker to your e-bike? Yes, I've got a big enough holster in my hip that I can carry the walker or any other cabin ball. And as far as the rifle, it will be butt forward, barrel back, coming along the main rail underneath the seat. So I'm pedaling and not have to worry about it. I'm not going to try to shoot in the saddle like it was a horse or something. And I'm not going to have it in any kind of scabbard going forward. In case I go down, I'd break it. I want it against the frame going backward. And that way, I'm not going to be running backwards in a hurry. If I do impact something, it would be the butt of the gun would stop the impact rather than the barrel, the muzzle. So that's the way I used to carry a shotgun on a bike when I was a boy. It'll kill. Blackie, do you know how to make a tracer round? I do not, but it's a hollow base bullet with something that's going to burn en route to show you. I've technically got the idea how, but I've never done and made them. Tim O'Neill, I need Silverwolf's help. I have about 20 acres with no 4x4 tracks. I hear you. Oh, yeah. Pink works like a charm. Aiming at a treetop, I managed to hit a target 350 yards with a 1911. The lob it and pray. We used to have an old 55-gallon drum full of sand at a shooting range I went to that was 221 yards away. It wasn't meant to be a target, but people had shot it. And I used to sit and put my back up against a telephone pole we had there, and I'd prop up on my knees with my walker. And I figured out about how much lead I had to have where I could drop and get 4 or 5 hits on that target as long as you let me warm up first out to that range. But it was lob and know where it's going. Technique, hello. Jerry Donnell, exactly. Wounded takes 4 to 9 people to take care of. Dead doesn't take but one, maybe. Woo, Tim O'Neill up the Burma Road. That was a tough battle. Randy, there will be more of grouch coming out here. Now that it's going to be summer, it's going to be hot. The doctor doesn't like me getting overheated, so I have to curtail a lot of my outdoor activities to early in the morning. And so I've started going over like every other week or whatever and visiting with grouch. And so there will be more videos with me and grouch coming up, I promise. Dakota in the woods in the house. Cool. Hello, brother. Okay. Dance with Empties, a line steel T5 knife. I'll keep that in mind. Wow. Tim O'Neill. Yeah. I have a complete collection of old hickory knives by Ontario. You can buy the whole thing for $100. That's a good investment. Jerry Donnell, can you give a quick history on, I think you meant to say grouch for us that don't know. Yes. Sir Francis McGowan, and he is a sir, he was knighted by the Queen of England, is a Force Recon Marine from Vietnam era, and my last living mentor. When I was in my early 20s, he kind of took me under his wing. He had grew up in the woods of southern Alabama like I did. His family was into timber and, stuff like that. So he grew up in the woods, trapping, hunting, and fishing. And he's like third or fourth generation Marine. Everybody went in the Marine Corps. It was expected. And me and him became friends at a living history event. And he kind of took me under his arm. And I have learned so much from that man, both from his military knowledge and his woodsman's knowledge and his woodscraft, bushcraft knowledge, and how to conduct class, how to be a gentleman up in front of a crowd and tell the horse's rear over here to sit down and shut up in a nice way that he's looking forward to it. I learned all of that from Francis McGowan, which we all call him Grouch. And that was his camp name. Like I'm Blackie, And he's in his 80s, and I go over and see him every chance I get. And I still, to this day, learn every time I get around him something. We were over there the other day cleaning up shotguns, and we're talking about it. And he was pointing out tricks on how to use shotgun on rising quail that I had never thought about, but I realized he was right when he was talking about it. So I've got to spend more time with him and get as much information on camera as I can. Oh, you got John, you got a Randall fighting knife. Awesome. Yeah, Frank, you got the step through frame. What you can do is make you a tube of some sort of soft material going from under the seat back to like the cargo rack, like a side saddle on there that your leg is going to be able to clear, right? Being able to step through and then take the gun and feed it into that tube, and then on the upper frame have some sort of hook yoke that you could set the gun into and attach with like strong Velcro or something so it can't slide forward. would probably work very well. That way you could get on the bike, so to speak, and then put the gun into the sleeve pretty easily. Um, okay, dances with empties. Groman knives are another knife manufacturer, but up here in Canada. They're a different style of knife, but effective for their intended use. Good to know. Tim O'Neill. We used to scare coyotes at about 700 yards with a mint 1879 trapdoor Springfield. It was a trophy in 57 because they thought no ammo was available. We were at a military school. I hear you. Grouch talked about how he was picking up 03, no, excuse me, 3040 Kriegs for $20 a piece, and he was making lamps out of them, but it still shot. So he would take a base, and they got the screw that held the butt plate in place, has two screws in it. He would take the two screws out, put a big base on it, and run two screws into those holes so it would stand up. And he had a plug that went down in it that had the cord that came down, so you had a lamp. But you could pull it apart and take the two screws out, and you had a functioning 3040 Krieg. And he said nobody was getting ammo for it, so they were $20 a piece. Who knew that ammo would become available again in the early 60s? So, Ken Aldridge, good night. Thanks for coming in. SEJ65. SE makes a good knife. Bill, for just standard carry, what do you guys think of the civil, the button lock specifically? I'm not familiar with that right off the top of my head. Sorry. Yeah. Tim O'Neill, 300 yards, I can put a 60 millimeter in your back pocket. Warheads on foreheads. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Preacher Man. Jerry Mikulik, he is a very talented man. Frank Clouds, good night. Yeah, and that's just it. Um, what made Elmer Keith famous was he was guiding up there in Idaho or Montana, and the guy he was guiding had shot an elk with a rifle, and the elk hadn't gone down, and they were trying to catch up to it, and the elk had went through a valley. When it came up, it was over 750, 800 yards out and was quartering away from him. And Elmer told the guy to shoot it again. And the guy didn't want to do it. He felt he couldn't hit it, and he wouldn't give his rifle to Elmer. So Elmer hopped off his horse, leaned back up against something, propped up on his elbows, and hit the elk at like 800 yards, putting the elk down so they could ride up to it and finish killing it. It was not dead, but it was down. And he was able to get up and finish it. And when they wrote about that, somebody back east that was a representative for Smith & Wesson called BS on it and wrote a letter back calling it BS. And so they published the response, and Elmer said, if you're willing to come to, Helena, Montana or whatever it is, I'll be glad to show you what 700-800 yard handgun shots look like. And the guy went, and sure enough, Elmer wasn't kidding. He really could hit a 55-gallon drum type thing at 800 yards with a handgun. That's what made him famous. But he lives out in that country, and he'd shot all his life, so he knew how to lob it in. Jerry Donnell, glad to do it. Jimmy Dunlap, you're on the road and you missed the Silver Wolves gathering and may not make it home for your North Carolina. What's your next one? I go to North Carolina the first week of May, skip a weekend. The third weekend of May, I will be in Ohio at OSS Boot Camp / Pathfinder Gathering, and I will be teaching at that. The next event that I know of is I'm going to be in West Virginia in September. There's a gathering up there that I'm going to be part of. Me and Dakota's going up to it. And then in October, early October, we're going to be doing a Silver Wolves class in North Georgia. That's the game plan. Also, somewhere out there in the horizon, me and James Bender are going to get together and do some videos together up there in Ohio, probably this winter. That's tentatively what I got out there right now. Dances with Empties. What's your experience with gun blankets and ponchos? I don't have hardly any experience with gun blankets. That was Civil War era. I do have a lot of experience with the U.S. Army poncho. I've used it as a tent. I've used it as a hammock, tarps, everything. That was my primary shelter in my teenage years. It was either a pup tent or a poncho. 9 times out of 10, it was just a poncho. That was what I used. So I have extensive experience with a poncho. And if you go look at my Ground Pounder series, I show some of that poncho stuff in there. Little tips and tricks like taking a thin piece of bank line and twisting it and then tying it so it makes this curly cue coming off the loops of the poncho liner. You just open it up and stick a stick in it, and you can stake it down, but it twists itself back up so it's not a loop hanging on everything when you're trying to wear it. It's just a straight piece and doesn't hang up on hardly nothing. And little tips and tricks like that. Yeah, Jeremy Dunlap. Sorry if I was confusing at times. Oh, yeah. Sir Malcolm, Blackie, I've been thinking about picking up one of the Rossi Brawlers. That gun has been resurrected like 4 times since the 70s, I know of. Just different companies have made it. But yeah, used to be called the Comanche years ago. It's a single shot break action 45 Colt 410 shot shell for walking the trail and snake season. Thoughts on load? Put a 410 number 8 shot in it, and it'll vaporize any snake problems you got. I wouldn't recommend going with the bigger shot because if you have any kind of rocks or whatever, it can bounce back. So if the snake is on rocky terrain, do not shoot straight down, be at an angle so they hit and go. Because if he's like right there and you point virtually straight down, it can bounce straight back up and hit you in the arm and the hand. So just be aware. But yeah, they're very effective for snake. Yes, it is a long barrel pistol. I know exactly what you're talking about. Jonathan Frisbee, what kind of canoe is good for surviving alligator bites? Fiberglass, usually. Alligators really don't like to bite the boat. They want to butt it. They'll come up and they'll like ram it. Fiberglass seems to be the most forgiving. The Ramex and the plastic canoes actually give in a little bit. And I guess the alligator thinks then it's like flesh and he may bite it then because it gives. Metal, they can tell metal, but fiberglass to me is the most rigid to the breaking point. Aluminum will bang in. Ramex or something's going to flex all over the place. And when he hits you, it's like a spring hitting you. I mean, it's a more violent hit where instead of the whole canoe going, it's like it loads up and snaps back like you pulled a rubber band and let go. I've had one ram me before where I was fishing this way and he was coming from that way and I didn't know it. And he hit me so hard, my head snapped back, because it was getting close to breeding season, and he was defending his territory. So Jeremy doesn't, I understand. Well, guys, that's 1 hour and 49 minutes. So for not doing a live tonight, we did a pretty good live tonight. Thank you all for checking in on me. You know, even though I said last week I wouldn't, again, I apologize. I got my dates wrong. But I will not be on next week because I will be in North Carolina on Thursday night. And I will try to put like a post or something onto my Facebook account. Those who don't know, I'm Blackie Thomas on Facebook. And with any luck, I'll have some good video and stories to tell when I get back. So everyone, thank you very much. God bless. Be safe. Safe journeys to you. And I'll see you next time. Good night.